So we want to look at the sugya daf kuf tes vav hamid beis, and it's approximately halfway down the Amud. Omar Rava. If you'll see on the right side of Tosas Dibra Maskil Tzorech Litol Sheitol, and you go up about 3 lines. The first word in the line is Ledate. Omar Rava. Bola Matzah Yotza, Bola Mara Lo Yotza. So we're talking about swallowing without chewing. Both in the cases of matzah, where the Torah says Be'erev Tochlu Matzahs, and in the case of marar, which is a zecher to the marirus and the shibud of Mitzrayim. So in the case of matzah, the Torah requires achila. And Rava says that blia, when you swallow something, that's called achila. It goes through your esophagus down to your stomach. That's called achila, even though you didn't chew it. Because all you need is achila. But erev tochlu matzahs. And that he did. But with regard to marar, where the Torah says vayimaru es chayeihem, so that the marar is a zecher for the shibud and the marirus of Mitzrayim, then if he swallows it without chewing it, he doesn't taste the tam of marar. So there's no zecher to vayimaru. So the mitzvah of marar is not just the mitzvah of achila, but it's a mitzvah of hargashas hamarirus, which requires le'isa, which is chewing as well. It's not enough that he swallows it, he's got to chew it. Now here, we have a note number tesvav. He says, L'chatchila, in the name of the Rashbam, tzorach lahargish tam matzah. So the ideal mitzvah of matzah would be not just achila, which means belia, but also te'ima. Now he quotes a Gemara in Brachos on Daf Lamed Ches Amid Beis that according to one opinion, if you take a matzah and you cook it, by cooking, it loses the taste of matzah, and therefore you cannot be yotzei the mitzvah. This has to do in contemporary life with people who have, they don't have teeth or whatever it might be. And this Man Omer says that cooking the matzah is not an option. So you see that tam is a critical element in matzah, according to that opinion. Shall we assume that that opinion would reject our Gemara, or say it the other way around, that our Gemara would reject that opinion? They're irreconcilable because our Gemara accepts and validates achilu without ta'am, without tasting the ta'am, and therefore bola matzah yotza, so that matzah mevusheles, okay, so he forfeits the ta'am matzah, but who cares? Ta'am matzah is not critical. And yet there's a Man Yomer who says that matzah mevusheles lo yotza. Does anybody see a distinction between the two? I think there's a clear-cut distinction here. What's the difference? I'm just going to reiterate the question between bola matzah and matzah mevusheles. You have to unmute yourself. John, what do you think?
Matzah mevusheles has been cooked.
And therefore what? We were just saying that bola matzah yotza, you don't need tam.
Right. But it's, I guess, that bishur takes away the tam.
In other words, the matzah itself has to have a tam.
It has to have a tam.
He doesn't have to taste the tam, but the matzah has to have a tam. If it doesn't have a tam, then it's not matzah. So you need a tam matzah as an identity of the cheftzah. But as far as the Maaseh Gavra is concerned, my act of Achila, I don't have to taste the time of matzah as long as there's time in the matzah. But if there's no time in the matzah because it's been cooked and the time has been removed, thus is nishkin matzah. It doesn't have a chefza shem matzah. He says, in the name of the Meiri, afal pisha b'sugyasenu mashma shetam matzah enu ma'akev. You don't have to taste the matzah. Hainu dafka b'matzah sheyesh b'tam. See, we didn't cheat. We could have written the Meiri. El shebola ba'ofet sheinu. The Gavra swallows it and he doesn't feel the time. He's not margish the time, but the matzah as a chefta of matzah has to have time. Amal matzah musheles, according to one man Omar, is ein ba klal tam matzah. Doesn't have a tam matzah. Don't call it a matzah. To identify something as matzah, it has to have a tam matzah. It's therefore ein yotzi midei chovasel. Oh, and he quotes the famous principle of the Gemara Menachos, called a roy lebila ein bila makevespa, but kol shein a roy lebila bila makevespa. So the chefza has to be roy, has to lend itself to ima. And he quotes many other Rishonim who say the same thing. Now, I just want to look up one thing here. Where would it be? I'm trying to remember, to jolt my memory, which volume of Hari Kedem do I need? Let me just look in the second volume for a second. No, I think it's in the first volume. Just see if I can find it. Oh, yeah. I think I'm going to find it. Very good. Do you happen to have Hari Kedem Chelik Aleph? No, you don't have that one. Oh, so I see John went to get it. So in the first chelik of Hari Kedem, Simon Zion, which is on page Yud Gimel, he has the following problem. The Rambam paskins that a shofar has to be kafuf. So, John, take a look on page Yud Gimel if you can.
Mitzvah shofar kafuf.
That's it.
Okay.
So the Rambam paskins that you need a shofar kafuf. It's got to be bent. And the Ravid argues in Asagas, this is the beginning of Hilchos Shofar, because it's a mitzvah to have a kafuf, but it's not ma'akiv. It's not critical. The Rambam seems to assume that it's absolutely critical, and kafuf ma'akiv b'di'ev. And the Gemara explains in Rosh Hashanah Daf Chavav, why do you want a kafuf? Because kama dekayef inish b'tfilaso tfei adif. When a person davens, he should be bowed in a bowing position. Kafuf, it means that he accepts the sovereignty of the Almighty. He's subjugated to God. So Rav Soloveitchik, here on the left column, in a paragraph that begins Avol Tzarech Iyun, raises the following question. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah Daf Chav Ches that Toka L'Shir Yotza. He had no intention of fulfilling the mitzvah of shofar. He blew for musical purposes. So we see that the idea of tefillah is not critical. And the special enhancement to the shofar of kafuf is because of tefillah. The Gemara says, Kayef inish b'tfilaso adif tfei. So the bending of the shofar is a reflection of tefillah, of the mode of prayer. But yet the Rambam paskins, like the Gemara, that Tokel Shir Yotza, even though he's not being Mekayim tefillah at all, he's just listening to the music. So the Rav answers the same. That I want to try to create a parallel between what we're learning now in our sugya and the Rav in Shofar. The chefetz of the Shofar itself, says Rav Soloveitchik, has to be roy litfila. The shape of the shofar, its identity as a shofar, has to reflect a posture of tefillah. That's kafuf. But as far as the kiyum hagavra, where the person himself has to be mispalel, in our case he's tokel l'shir, eino ma'akev. So basically what we're saying is that l'chatchila, if all things were ideal, he would have a tefillah through the shofar. And that's called kayef inish. The shofar itself must have that ability to reflect the kiyum bishlemus, to the ideal mitzvah. That's as far as the identity of the shofar. When he comes to fulfill the mitzvah of shofar, the gavra, then ideally he should have tefillah, but tokel l'shir yotza. Same thing in matzah. As we said in the name of the Rashbam, ideally he should chew the matzah and taste the matzah. And therefore the chefetz of the matzah and its identity has to lend itself to that fulfillment of ta'am matzah. But as far as a matzah she'eina mevushelas, a matzah that has a ta'am, then if he was bala matzah, he swallowed the matzah without te'ima, without tasting the matzah, yotza. Like in the case of tokel l'shir yotza, he didn't have a kavanas tefillah, but as long as the shofar is a reflection of the kiyum b'shleimus, the ideal mitzvah, which is with tefillah, and it's got to be kafuf. So to the matzah has to be roy l'te'ima. And this is interesting because in Mirza Hashem, I don't know, when is May 1st? About a week from now? I don't even know what are we up to in April, like the 22nd or something?
We're only the 16th.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks. So B'li Neder in 2 weeks, remind me of this discussion that we're having now when we learn about the shear of a lulav. The lulav has to be 4 tfachim. 3 tfachim and then a 4th tefach for nanuim. And we paskin that mida'ad be nofik be. You could be yotze in the midst of lulav even without nanuim. But again, the chefts of the lulav and its identity is contingent on the fact that he has the possibility and the lulav lends itself to a full-fledged kiyum. Okay. Bola matzah umara. Now he swallows matzah and mara together. Yedei matzah yotza, yedei mara lo yotza. Now we just finished saying that bola matzah yotza, bola mara lo yotza. If he swallows them both together, he'll fulfill his mitzvah of matzah be'erev tochlu matzah with a ma'isa achila, and he'll forfeit the mitzvah of mara because he didn't taste the merirus, he didn't do any le'isa. He was bola. I have a problem here. I'm just wondering if anybody... Yeah, l'chor it should be mitzvahs bevatlo zu is zu. So he quotes a Meiri that maybe we're talking about a case of karchan besiv. I know that's going to come up later in the Gemara. Just 1 second. Oh, here it is. I finally found it. You'll see that footnote number Yud Ches is a very long note. And it's broken up into 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. I'm in the middle of the 3rd paragraph, which starts with the words Kishabola Matzah. And if you drop down to the end of the 2nd line of that paragraph, no, actually the 1st line of that paragraph, Varishonim is kasher. Are you able to find that? Varishonim is kasher. Me'achar sheni yotzi yedei chovas achilas morar nimtza sheblias hamorar lo haisa shel mitzvah. V'im kein madua lo yevatel hamorar shel reshus es tama matzah shel mitzvah. Kishem sha'amru li'el shemor derabbanan mevatel taima shel matzah doraisa kshekorchan yachad. This is halacha of bittul. See, I don't know why he has to emphasize that the mora lo yotza, and therefore it's a blias rishus. Even if he was yotze mora, it would still be mavatel the matzah, because mora is the rabbanan. Hosef of Arsha, sha'af ilu hayotze. Oh, okay, fine. Again, I'm not cheating here. I'm just saying that which is logical. So he quotes an answer from Tosfos. Shaloshayach bittul. Let's just see if we can underline this. Just give me a second. I'm sorry. Ella kishalo son yachad shetama echad mevatel es tama sheni. So we're not talking about a case where he's chewing the matzah the maror simultaneously. He's swallowing them simultaneously without chewing them. Shebolam yachad, when he swallows them simultaneously, af im yeh echad meruba mechavero edo mevatel. Shaloshayach bitol el kshenichnas hamachol b'meyav v'tam acher me'urev bo. Hainu al yidei achila. Aval b'bliya ein atamim misarvim. So when he swallows it without chewing it, there's no mixture of tam because he doesn't feel any tam. And therefore, matzah omedes b'fnei atzma. And he has Rabbeinu David, who says that this Gemara is talking bismana migdash, which is very strange, and therefore Mara is doraisa. Okay, so that's very important for us. Now let's go on. Korchan b'siv. So he wraps the matzah and the Mara together in some sort of a gigantic leaf from a palm tree, ublan. So now the matzah and the maror don't even touch his, they have no contact with his base habliya because he has a chatzitza here between the matzah and the maror and his base habliya. And so far as this is what they tell you if you have to take a pill and it's not kosher, or it's Yom Kippur, whatever it might be, you wrap the pill up in a tissue and swallow it. You know what I'm talking about? He says, Af yidei matzah nami lo yotza. I guess he's saying this is not called an achilas matzah. Because, yeah, but why does he have to say karchan? Why didn't he just tell me karach matzah lo yotz, besiv lo yotz? I don't know why he has to mix it together with the maror. He says here about 4 lines before the end of the page in the footnote number chaf, chasiv chotzeitz bein hamatzah v'maror lefiv bein zu achila. So why didn't he just mention karach matzah b'siv? So if you look at footnote number Yutes, he quotes the Rashash, Shalach Ora, Gam im Korach Kol Echad Mehem B'fnei Atzmo B'siv V'yochel Lo Yotza. Okay, so the Rashash for some reason is not bothered by our question. I guess since Rava was talking about a case of Bola Matzah U'Maror Yachad, so he speaks about Karchan B'siv, but really, this Sefer of Rava is totally independent of the ratio.
So why is a sieve? Okay, I understand why it's a chatzitza, but why wouldn't the maror be a chatzitza?
Because maror does not separate the matzah from his beis habliya. The problem of maror is only that it might negate the tam of the matzah.
But I mean, I think, we use romaine lettuce. We would wrap the matzah. It would be totally enclosed.
So that would be karcham b'siv. Then he would not be yotze the mitzvah of matzah.
Oh, so it's okay.
But if
So it's not just that.
if he swallows matzah and maror, since there was no bittul atam, and the matzah touched his beis habliya because the maror didn't surround the matzah. Okay. So now we're up to Rav Shimi bar Ashi, correct? So we're talking about the question of shulchanos. Amar Rav Shimi bar Ashi, matzah lifnei kol echad v'echad. Everyone has to have their own. Every member of the household who's sitting around the table has to have his. They used to have small tables. Each one has to have his own table for matzah. Maror, likewise, lifnei kol echad v'echad. So each one should have his maror on his table, and he should eat his maror. Again, he doesn't have to have his own table, but that's the way they ate in those times. You want to have whatever you need for the mitzvah. You want to have immediately accessible to you. So you have it on, we call it a kara today. Charoses lifnei kol echad v'echad. Everyone has to have their own charoses. Okay, so we didn't get to the sugi of charoses yet, but it seems that the requirement of tibul b'charoses is incumbent, and it's an individual obligation incumbent on each person. However, ein okris hashulchan el lifnei misha omer haggadah. So when they took away the shulchan, like let's say, for example, they brought out the first yerek for tibul rishon, and they did tibul rishon. They made a bracha or a priyadama. They dipped the yerek into melach, into chometz, and that's it. They were mekayim the mitzvah of tibul rishon. Now they take away the shulchan, and this is meant to arouse the curiosity of the child. However, there's no need to make sure that every single shulchan or kara is removed. You don't need an akira shulchan from each one, because the eyes of the children are fixated on the Omeres Haggadah. Let's see if he adds anything here. So the fact that there's an Omer's Haggadah indicates, according to the poskim, that the Baal Bayis should recite the Haggadah, and the Bnei Bayis should listen to his Haggadah, his recitation of the Haggadah. I don't know that that's our minhag. At least I never saw it. Did you see it that way? That only one person recites the Haggadah? No. That's interesting. Maybe we should change our minhag here, because he quotes the Shulchan Aruch Rav. Shekein nochon lasos shel abayis balbayis yomer es Haggadah ubnei abayis yetzu yidei chovasam b'shmiya mishum berov am hadras melech. This reminds me of Rav Soloveitchik says that Haggadah is a kiyum of Shevach V'Odaya. And in Shevach V'Odaya, you have a halach of Rov Am. The more people who are jointly involved in singing the praises of Hashem, the greater the mitzvah is. There's no need to set up the matzah, the maror, and the charoses on each person's table, his private table. Let the Baal Haggadah, meaning the Omer Haggadah, let him divvy out from his kara the matzah, the maror, and the charoses. So what is the nature of this machlokes here? So it seems like Rav Huna has a halach of kara as a separate requirement of kara, which is incumbent on each individual. I'm not sure why. So one way of understanding it is technical, it's logistical, and that is we want a certain immediacy. We don't want to wait, have everybody around the table wait until, I call him the Baal Haggadah, the Omer Haggadah, divvies out. You imagine you have 25 people, but that's just technical. I don't know. I'm not sure there should be machlokas amoraim in the Gemara about that. I think more appealing would be to say that Rav Huna's machadish halach of shulchan, of kara, that each one should have his own shulchan. Not sure why though, if it's not just technical. Maybe it's halacha in Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, that the Sipur should be bavur zeh. So each person has his own. So as far as the Haggadah is concerned, the Amira, that's Berov Hamadras Melech. But each person is listening to the Haggadah and fulfilling his mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim by listening. And that's Berovam. But he should have matzah b'fanav, according to Rav Huna, so that the sipur is related to his matzah. And then when he eats the matzah, the sipur was on that matzah. Rav Huna is arguing that you cannot accomplish that goal and achieve a sipur on the matzah if the Omer Haggadah is going to divvy out the matzah. Because let's call him Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi, right? So Ruvain recites the Haggadah, and then when it's time for the matzah, he gives Shimon a piece of matzah, but Shimon's personal sipur was not really chal on that matzah. But according to Rav Shimi, the first opinion in the Gemara, all the matzah that's going to be given out is in front of the Omer Es Haggadah. And therefore the sipur of everyone is related to all the matzahs on the kara. This would be fascinating. Let's say, the Omer Es Haggadah has 3 matzahs on his table, on his kara, right? Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. And he already put away half of a matzah for the afikomen. So he's down already to 2.5. Then he makes his brachos, and Lomazog, he eats a kizayis from each of 2 matzahs. One is a shlema and one is a prusa. By now, he's like down to 1.5 matzahs, or less even. Now he goes over to the closet or to another table, and he brings more matzah in order to divvy it up amongst the people so that they could each be mekayim the mitzvah of matzah. Then the sipur wasn't on the matzah. Again, the sipur was on the matzah that he ate, and maybe Shimon as well, but not Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, because that matzah was in the closet. So therefore, Rav Huna wants to guarantee that it's not the Omer Haggadah who's running around, giving out matzah, but rather each person at the table, insofar as he's been mekayim his mitzvah of sipur, whether he's reciting the Haggadah himself or he's hearing the Omer Es Haggadah, that's irrelevant. But his mitzvah sipur is connected, is chal on that matzah that he's going to eat for the mitzvah of matzah. And that's Bavur Zeh. So Bavur Zeh, b'shosh yesh matzah umar munach l'fanech, is not just defining the time for the mitzvah of Haggadah, right? Lafuke, let's say on Rosh Chodesh Nisan or Mibod Yom. No, it goes way beyond that. It means that the Magid, meaning the Haggadah, should be chal on the matzah, and he's going to eat the matzah upon which there was a Haggadah. And that's called Lechem Oni. She'onim olav dvarim harbe. On this matzah, they recited the Haggadah, and that's called Bavur Zeh. Now, let me just open up our Haggadah. I still have my Haggadahs floating around. I want to see when you expose the matzah. Let me just check that out. Oh, in my Haggadah, that's this one here, he writes, Megala es hamatzos, v'omer avodim hayinu lefaro b'mitzrayim. Yeah, the only problem is that this is after Manishtana. Because I would have assumed that the kickoff of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is Manishtana. So why is he uncovering the matzah for Avodim Hayinu, which is the answer to the Manishtana? That I don't have. Oh, now look at Holach Ma'anya, which is the official opening of Magid. So in my Haggadah it says, Megala es hamatzos. So it could be that for Kadesh, for Kiddush, maybe we don't want to insult the matzah because we're making Kiddush al yayin. I don't know. I don't see any indication here that that's so, but I would believe that that's so. No, does that make sense? That the matzahs are covered at the time of Kiddush. Yeah? Everybody agree with that? But then he's ready for Magid, for Holach Ma'anyo, Magalas HaMatzos. So the Magid should be on the revealed matzahs, not the covered matzahs. And that means that Bavur Zeh, and this is my addition, that is connecting the sipur to the matzah. And then it makes sense that each person should have his own matzah. Not sure about charosas here, where that fits in. Maybe charosas is part of the mitzvah of matzah, part of the mitzvah of morah. I don't know. Now, the strange thing is that after halach ma'anya, apparently there's no matzah on the table. And the child asks the manishtana. And then, when we get to the answer to the manishtana, avodah mayinu, it says megalas hamatzos. We bring the matzahs back onto the table. So I'm not sure, why did he take off the matzahs for the manishtana? That's a pella to me. Now I know. Yeah, because that itself is going to arouse the curiosity of the children. I think that makes sense. Lama okrim es hashulchan, Amri debei Rav Yanai, kidei she'akira tinokos v'yishalu. So it seems that taking away the matzahs and the shulchan, that what we call akira hashulchan, that itself is a prologue to the manishtana, to the questions of the children. And he says here in the footnote, number chafav, when we talk kach yishalu al shara shinuyim shebalayla zeh. So then it means that he takes out the shulchan with the matzahs. The child is curious, he'll ask his questions, and then for the avodah mayinu, which is the kickoff of the actual teretz, the magid, the matzahs have to be there, and that's why Rav Huda wants each person to have his own matzah. Abaya Aviyasiv Kami de Rabbah. So Abaya was at the table of Rabbah on the night of the Seder Chaza, and he saw Abai saw the Kamadli Taka Mikame. He says here, Shekbiu es hashulchan milifnei Rabba liachar tibul rishon. Okay, so why did they do that? It was after Tibul Rishon, and they took away the matzahs. The answer is that they were hoping that Abai would ask that question. Amalahus, Abai says, why are you taking away the matzahs? Adai lo kachlino, we didn't eat the matzah yet. And you take it off the table. We ate the matzah, all right, there's leftover matzah, take it off the table. Why in the world are you taking off the matzahs before we eat the matzahs? We were meant to eat the matzahs. You take them away from the table, how am I going to eat the matzahs? Asu kama akre tako mi kamon. You take away the matzahs. Amalei Rabba patartan mi lomar manishtana. You've asked the question, we no longer have to ask the manishtana. Okay, there are both sides. So Linetta, tomorrow we'll try to get back on track. And we'll pick it up here on Daf Kuftes Vav. I wish you a great day. Thank you so much.